All right, three, two, one. Hello and welcome to the Gonzo Experience. This is David Gonzo Mamano. I have a great guest today on the show, and really, I'm excited because she's also a friend. Her name is Caitlin Drago. Caitlin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Are you ready for the Gonzo Experience?
I am. I have a question though.
Yeah.
Where did Gonzo come from? Is that actually? I'm going to ask a really silly question. Is that your middle name, really? Or is that, this is probably something I should have asked not in the middle of your interview.
We are in discovery mode already. I love it. I love it. So Gonzo is not my real birth middle name. That would be Charles, after my grandfather from Sicily. You say Charles is the Sicilian name. Well, Calogero is, and Charles is the American version of Calogero. So a little fun fact there. But Gonzo came from when I was in college, SUNY Buffalo, University of Buffalo, which we like to call the Ivy of the SUNYs. That was a joke. But I joined a fraternity, Sigma Alpha Mu. Go Sammys. And we actually all got fraternity names and we used them. And so apparently they thought I looked like Gonzo the Muppet. Can't imagine why, because my nose is so tiny. And it became my name. So like if you ran into, let's say you ran into a woman around the age of 52, 53, and she said that she went to University of Buffalo, and you might say, oh, did you know David Mamano? And she might say like, no. How about Gonzo? Oh yeah, I was great friends with them. Like it was like we all had like Madonna. We had like one name, Cher, So it was like, and we still use the names today. We're still very close with our fraternity brothers, and we take trips together and all that stuff. And we still use our fraternity name. So I was Gonzo throughout college, and people that know me in college still call me Gonzo today.
Gotcha.
So a very long-winded answer. Sorry about that.
No, I appreciate
it. So Caitlin, we've known each other, God, I want to say 8 years. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
We have a common love of comedy, specifically improv. I dabbled in it when I was in my 20s, moved to Chicago, took classes at the Improv Olympics and Second City and did some improv. But nowhere near to the level that you have taken improv so seriously and using that into building a business. Who would have thought that improv and business would go hand in hand, but yet you are making it happen. So Caitlin, I want to hear more about your story about you and improv and how you got into that and how it has led to where you are today.
Sure. So I went to school at SUNY Fredonia, close by Buffalo, and I went for acting. And then, the natural progression was, all right, well, now I'll go live in LA and see what happens. I didn't become an overnight sensation, which was a little bit of a bummer. But I began studying improv at, well, actually, if I back up, I started doing improv professionally at Universal Studios. I was a character down by the Jurassic Park ride where we wore safari gear and we were, I think we called ourselves Dino Chasers. So we were there to entertain the people who were waiting in line for the Jurassic Park ride. And sometimes that meant, making up silly skits for people. Other times that meant having silly conversation with guests. Sometimes that meant taking over a tour group's, like, the little flags that they follow and declaring ourselves the leaders of the tour group and going on the ride with them, which we only got in trouble doing if we handed in our costumes wet. But if we went on the ride early enough in the day and they were dry by the end of the day, that was okay. Um, but that's where I really started to get into it. And then I started taking classes at the Upright Citizens Brigade, which, if you're familiar with like Amy Poehler and Matt Besser and Matt Walsh and Horatio Sands, they were the ones who started that, and went through that program, really, really loved it. And that's where around the time where I was really getting into that is also the time that I'd been in LA for, I don't know, probably 6 years at that time. And although, I know it can take a while. I was starting to get into that like feeling of, I'm starting to feel a little resentful here. It's kind of a bummer that my success mostly depends, unfortunately, in that industry on how I look and who I know, more so than your actual skill set. And so I had friends who'd been in LA for a really long time, and I saw them get even more resentful and angsty. I'm like, I don't want to get to that point. And so my partner and I decided to move back to the Rochester area. And I thought that I would get, like a whatever job where I at least liked the people who I worked with. And then in the evenings and weekends, I would do improv and theater and kind of feed that part of my soul. But once you are in improv and theater, you can't get it out. And so I happened to land at a firm where they did professional development and team building and things like that. And I knew that there were companies in larger cities that used improv for those purposes of professional development and team building, communication skills, and all that great stuff. And so I put that forth as, hey, I know you hired me basically as an administrative assistant, but if you want me to try this out, I'm here. And so I was pulled in, informally a couple of times, and I really loved doing it. And so I started, outside of work, building that more on my own. And then through the just professional arch and journey that we all go through, that became a more formal part of my position. And then I was able to get my leadership coaching training and certification. And then I had my first child, and the entire world changed. And I wanted to be able to have more flexibility and autonomy over what I was doing. And so I left with all of the support in the world from my employer, thankfully, and started my own company where I could really focus on coaching and facilitating and using improv to help people to be better listeners and collaborators and really build that empathy, creativity, and trust.
What a great story.
That's my long-winded answer for the day.
Well, that was a great wind. It was very refreshing, and I loved it. I felt like I was on the beach in San Diego. So thank you.
Wonderful.
So you took, your story is kind of a, lemon to lemonade story. I mean, you didn't become the big, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler star that you dreamed of overnight. Yet you took your experience and turned it into, a very happy lifestyle for yourself, married, kids. You look very happy. You do speaking. We just spoke at an event here together in Rochester, and it was reconnected us after 2 years of being masked up and not seeing anybody. So it was great to see you, and you did a great job on your talk. So, so now, first, what I want to do now is let the Gonzo family learn a little bit more about how they could use improv into their business, their sales, et cetera. So we're going to ask for a little bit of your nuggets, maybe a little bit of your secret sauce, but not too much. I mean, we still want them to work with you, but but for those, you and I know improv, what it is, and people, a lot of people have heard of it and maybe know enough to be dangerous. But why don't we just back up a little bit? What is pure improv, and how can we as business professionals, entrepreneurs, use that to grow our business, sales, leadership, self, etc.
Sounds good. Improv 101. Here we go.
Let's back up.
All right. So the fun thing about improv is that when I walk into a room of professional non-actors and say, all right, we're going to be doing improv, a lot of the air seems to escape the room at that moment. And so what I have to remind people immediately is that unless you woke up this morning and you have some kind of magical personal assistant who gave you a script and said, this is everything that's going to happen today, and this is the perfect way to respond in every situation. Unless that's happening, chances are you're doing improv all the time, every day. So it's simply, you know, as you think about some of the tools that I'll share here, it's sharpening a tool that you already have. You're not starting from scratch here. You're already an expert in some capacity. So improv is an art form where everything is made up on the spot. Nothing is planned ahead of time. If you've ever been to an improv show, you might see the team come out and ask for a word or suggestion, and then they take that and run with it. And from the outside, that might look like it's a free-for-all, but what enables them to do that and put together a cohesive show from maybe a one-word suggestion is that they've all agreed to a specific set of rules and principles to make that happen. The first being that we always say yes and. So that means that we actively listen to each other. We accept what that person has put forth as the idea of the moment. We and it, we say and then we add on with our own idea to build on the idea that was just put forth. And what that does, if you think about the sales or business application right there, is, you know, if you think back to conversations, even that you just had today, I'd encourage people to ask themselves, how often was I actually fully present and listening to what the other person was saying? And how often was I thinking more about what I was going to say instead of listening to them? And that's where we get ourselves in trouble. A lot of and not to say that conflict is a bad thing. Conflict can be a very good thing. But a lot of conflict and misunderstanding comes from simply not listening to one another. So if you are a salesperson and you've got something in the back of your mind that you really want to be able to offer this person, and all you're focused on is, okay, how can I make this, how can I show the value that's here? As much as you are probably coming from a place of really wanting to share a service and share, you know, what it is that you have to offer with this person, if you're not actually listening to their needs and what they're really saying, you might miss out on how you can even better help them. So that first rule is we say yes and we actively listen, because you can't add on to something you didn't hear. And we are present with one another, and we agree that we're going to go with whatever that person puts forth, which kind of flies in the face of our natural tendency to also, you know, along with not listening to, when we're given something that might be a little outside of the box or surprising, we say no, and these are all the reasons why that's not going to work. And so when we say yes and, instead we're opening ourselves up to new ideas and innovation and building trust with that person as well, because they know that they can come to us with an idea, and we're going to, at the very bare minimum, we're going to at least listen to it, whether or not we end up going in that direction. We're at least going to listen to it. We're not going to immediately squash it and tell them all the reasons why it's not going to work. And I'll add to that, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to say yes and agree with everything. It's, you know, I call it the yes and mindset. So it's that acknowledge what the other person said, take it in, consider it, look for what could work, and then give your response.
I'm sorry, I was totally spacing out. I really wasn't listening. I'm just kidding. There's so many lessons there in business, right? So, I mean, first and foremost, I was just joking, but I was listening very intently, as I always do to you. But I mean, in improv, like, you can't let your mind drift, right? You need to be like totally on the cutting edge of what's going on, what's being said, because before you know it, it's your turn, you know, to bring that, you know, conversation / humor to the next level. And if your mind wanders, you can be caught like, yes. And, oh, what, so, I mean, you need to be on. So first and foremost, I love the fact that it emphasizes, very active and engaged listening, because that quite often doesn't happen anytime, but especially in business, people get, if they're not talking about themselves or, people are, their mind is starting to think about themselves. So thank you for that. So I would say number one big lesson for me is active listening, just like improv. So, and number two is I learned this from a business consultant years ago, that when you say, love what you said, but what about this? He would say, whatever you said before the word but, you just canceled everything that the other person said. Basically, like negated, like, oh, Caitlin, those are great ideas, but so basically I'm saying like, those were not great ideas and we should go in this direction. So
And Dave, what's awesome, and I find language to be really fascinating and the impact that certain words can have on us, even subconsciously. When you look at that but versus and, if we use the example that you just had, finish that sentence for me of, oh, I love that idea, but, and then what would you say next?
But maybe we should also think about moving in this direction.
Okay, so that's our sentence. I love your ideas, but maybe we should think about moving in some of these other directions as well. All right. So if I simply, and this is not going to work 100% all the time, nothing does. If I take that but and simply switch it to an and, this is what it sounds like. I love that idea. And let's look at some of these other ideas as well. I am not changing the meaning. I'm not being facetious or trying to be manipulative, giving the same info. At the same time, that person is going to walk away from that conversation into completely different brain spaces. One where they, like you said, they're going to be like, oh, well, they don't like any of my ideas. Nothing's going to happen here. The other where they stay engaged, they stay a thought partner with you, and they're going to walk away feeling like they've been heard and that their idea is actually going to be considered. And maybe at that point, since they know that their initial idea has been heard, maybe they'll be more likely to listen to the other ideas that you are bringing forth as well. Just that simple shift
One word
from but versus and. It's amazing.
And I've seen people do it. I have seen people use that is great. And let's also think about these. And I'm like, it warms my heart because you could see people staying engaged because basically that person was saying like, I really do love your ideas. And what about adding this stuff too? Instead of saying, but, because you could almost see like the change in their face when you say the word, but, like you are starting to shut them down and they're not going to be listening anymore. Right. So I think those are the two biggest nuggets that I'm getting from your lessons there so far is, pretend that it's an improv routine and you need to be listening because it's going to be your turn to take the conversation to the next level. And when you do that, do not say, challenge yourself to not say the word but, and yes, and which is the two key words in improv, as you said.
Mm-hmm. And as people, if they do take that particular nugget away of, all right, I'm going to try to switch my but with my and, you're going to start by noticing how often you say but. And you're going to want to go into like, oh man, this is never going to happen. I say but all the time and really beat yourself up about it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It starts with that awareness.
Start a butt jar. Start a butt jar.
Start a butt jar.
Like, oh my God, I made $10 today, right? So,
yeah, right. It's true. Like it starts there. And then once you notice that, then you have a choice to make that shift when you start feeling that word forming.
Yeah. No, that's great. So how do you get into companies? Because, usually it's like the companies want to hire people to increase sales, maybe to increase workplace culture. Maybe the CEO wants some leadership training. And you're coming to them with like, hey, I have like a kind of a humor-based strategy, which, some stodgy CEOs may be like, well, listen, like, that's cute and all, but we're a professional organization, and I don't know if humor has any place in what we're doing. Do you find some of that, and how do you break through some of those walls?
Well, luckily, more and more, improv is becoming a much more acceptable and legitimized vehicle for learning how to communicate more effectively. And everything really does come back to communication. So when it comes to that resistance to doing something that's a little bit outside of the box and something that is going to bring some humor and laughter to the situation, there's a couple of things to think about. First is that I always design with the introvert who doesn't want to be there in mind. So I do my best to create that psychological safety, put a lot of parameters and rules and reasoning into place so that they don't feel like I'm just throwing them in the deep end right away. And the other great thing is that when we learn by doing, we're going to internalize it a lot faster and it's going to stick with us a lot longer. And also when you add the chance to laugh together, what that does is it takes us out of that fight or flight stressful mode where we really can't take in new information and brings us to a place where we can think more strategically and creatively. And so once we're laughing and connecting with each other, that expands that possibility of really, again, taking in and retaining the lessons that people are learning. And so, I mean, the reason why a lot of companies bring me in is either there is something within the culture that they want to change, whether that is teamwork, which is yes-anding each other. We're building something together that we might not have come up with on our own. It's that connection. It's, being present. It's that communication. And a lot of times it's situations where maybe there has been a merger or a restructuring. So you've got people who didn't have to work together, who now have to work together. And this is a great way to start them off by really establishing norms for how they're going to communicate and work together as they go forward. I'll stop there before I make another very long-winded answer and let you respond.
Yes, and I thought that was terrific. So thank you for that. So I want to have some fun. You want to have some fun?
Absolutely.
Since you're an expert and I know enough to be dangerous, let's throw out a word here and do a mini little improv to teach the Gonzo family what improv is. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So I'll throw out the word and you start. How's that sound?
Okay. Sounds good.
Can it be a name? I forgot. Can we do a whole name?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
All right.
The nice thing is the word that's thrown out is the jumping off point. I can always A to C it where it's I'm getting into improv nerd mode where you say pineapple. Okay, in my brain, all right, that makes me think of a tree. That makes me think of an acorn seed. And I start the improv with something to do with acorns. So you can throw whatever you want out there.
All right. Jeffrey Bezos.
Jeffrey Bezos. Okay. Oh, Dave. Oh my gosh, you won't believe what just came in the mail. I totally forgot I had ordered it.
Yes. And I thought about that the other day when you ordered it, because I was about to order it myself. And then I was so embarrassed to do it myself. And then when I saw you do it, I was happy.
Yeah. I know. It really helps when you see someone else ordering something that maybe is like, oh, I don't know about this. But I'll tell you, when I opened that box and saw this teddy bear, that's a weighted teddy bear specifically for adults, it's completely changed my life.
Yeah, well, I could imagine. The weird thing is that it had a bikini on, and I really didn't know why you would order a teddy bear with a bikini.
Yeah, it is interesting that it's a teddy bear with a bikini, and I think that part of their marketing plan was to really just take us to a couple of places, take us to a place where we feel like a kid and we're just being comforted, and also remind us of being on vacation too. Like it's weird at first, and it's also brilliant.
Yeah. And, the fact that you did that really makes me, really reminds me that we do need to go on vacation. And, we haven't been to Iceland in so long. And, I'm really thinking that we should book our trip soon.
Oh my gosh, we should absolutely book our trip to Iceland as soon as possible. And in the meantime, let's practice our Icelandic the next time we get together. Yes. Absolutely. 100%.
I'm so glad you agree with me. Thank you so much. I got to go, but thank you so much. That was fantastic. I'm glad you understood me.
No, Dave, I think I lost you. Oh, I lost you for a second, but you're back.
We are back. Well, as long as you understood my Icelandic, I think we're good to go. So.
Dave, can I throw one other principle out there? Because for those who are familiar with improv,
yeah,
they know the yes and. It's the secondary one that sometimes is can be really mind-opening. And I know you want to stick to a certain time frame. So, but yes. I want to just get it out there.
Please.
Okay. So it's the idea that we're always looking to make each other look good. It's not about what's the funny thing I'm going to say. We're looking to set each other up for the laughs. So if you bring this into your team, try to shift away from, okay, what do I have to get done today? And how am I going to do it all by myself? Take a second and look around at the people around you and think, okay, well, who else could be really good at this and who might be really excited to take this on? And look for ways to set each other up to do things that they're really good at and that they're really passionate about. Because when we all look for ways to make each other look good, we all end up looking really great collectively with a lot less stress and a lot more fun.
I love that. I love that you said that. So 3 great takeaways for me and hopefully the audience here. Active listening. Improv is all about active listening. No buts. All ands. Set up your butt jar. $1 every time you say butt. And give your teammates, I'm going to say an alley-oop to look good.
Yeah, I like that.
Those are 3 great lessons from improv that people can implement in business today. So, Caitlin, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
If you guys are watching this, you'll see that part of watching Caitlin or experiencing Caitlin do comedy is that you've got a great smile. So, and so I think that helps. I think when comedians have a great smile, it helps a little bit more, My dad always laughs at me. He always says that I laugh hardest at my own jokes, so maybe, maybe it makes it more contagious. I don't know. But, so I truly appreciate you. Now you do work all over the country, all over the world. You can work with anybody. So if people do want to get in touch with you to learn more, maybe just have an intro conversation or Zoom, how do they find you and get in touch with you?
They could go to my website, which is inspireimprov.com, and you can schedule a time to chat there. And the, benefit-ish of the last couple of years is, prior to 2 years ago, I would have said, oh no, we don't really do improv virtual. It doesn't really work. But I figured out how to do it real quick. And it seems to work really well, especially with remote teams who maybe haven't had that chance to have those personal connections just yet. And it's a really fun way to get them connected and get them communicating. Excellent. And you could do business with a company in Iceland. Mm-hmm, I could. And the language, which is perfect. Excellent. Well, Caitlin, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and your energy and your laughs today and all of your lessons. Really great stuff. Thanks for being born. Thanks for spending time with me today. Appreciate the heartbeats, and I wish you continued massive success. Thank you for having me, Dave. Take care. Thank you. And I want to thank the Gonzo family for listening to yet another episode of
the Gonzo Experience. Like us, share us, all that good stuff. Really appreciate it. And at the end of the day, make sure to stay awesome.